It snowed. They were calling for about 1 to 3 inches of snow, and I think we got like 4 or 5. It snowed quite a bit. We had to go out and plow a little bit of snow this morning. I'm just getting back to the farm. I'm gonna fire up this tractor here and see if I can get some ground worked. I went out last week and tried to work a little bit. Got half the field done, and it was just a little too wet. Hoping now that the ground's froze, I can get it done. I'm gonna fire it up here, let it warm up a little bit, and see what we can do. One thing I like to do at the end of the year is kind of look back on all the things we did, what we got accomplished, what we didn't get accomplished, what we did right, what we did wrong. I've had this idea for a while of doing kind of a post-harvest review video of just kind of recap what happened this year. You know, it was kind of a hectic year with weather-wise, so I've been wanting to do this. Hopefully it's interesting for you guys. I figured I wanted to do it while I was actually doing something, so at least if I'm sitting in the tractor working ground, you'll have something to look at instead of just listening to me talk. But we're gonna do that. Throwing some gas in my pickup real quick. I'm gonna head out to the field here in a little while and see if we can get that done. So we're gonna be working ground today with the 9410R and this Kraus Dominator that we've got. You may be wondering, well, Weston, if you want to switch to no-till, why are you using a disc gripper? Well, we've got a lot of ruts from this year. It was a pretty wet fall. Combine and auger cart cut a lot of ruts, and this is probably our best tool to fill them back in. Our disc, we could use a disc, but it wouldn't leave a very level, you know, it wouldn't leave the ground very level. This is what's going to do the best job of leveling back out, and we've got these disc levelers and rolling baskets in the back. It's going to leave it nice and smooth. So I really don't like doing it. Conditions kind of suck, but we got to get those ruts filled in. Otherwise, we're going to fight them all year next year and for years to come. So that's my reasoning. Good or bad, that's what we're doing. So there's 24 acres in this field. I've got maybe not quite half of it done already. Most of the ruts, I mean the worst of the ruts were over on that side and I got through them. There's a spot in the back here that's kind of wet, and I had to wait for it to freeze up a little bit. I really don't like doing what I'm doing right now, but this whole field's kind of got ruts all the way through it. Some are worse than others, and it really just makes more sense to just get them leveled back off. We're not in a no-till rotation yet, so I'm not really destroying any structure of the soil that I've already built up. You know, we're coming out of conventional till, going back to just plain old conventional till. So we can still work this towards a no-till program in the future, but for now, this is our option. So like I've said, I kind of like to, at the end of the year, look back on what we did, what we accomplished, what we did right, what we did wrong. I think 2019, it's especially important to do that. We've had to deal with things this year that we just didn't really ever have to deal with before. The spring was extremely wet. It seemed like it was never going to stop raining for a while. We didn't even know if we were going to be able to plant our crop. Speed ahead a little bit, we actually did get all of our crops planted. If you've watched my videos or followed along, it was a struggle, but we got it done, and I'm pretty proud of that myself. We didn't put very many crops into very good conditions, if you know what I mean. Most of the ground was pretty wet. You know, nothing was really that fit. It was, you know, the field cultivator would sink. You'd have spots here and there that you had to plant around just because it was just way too wet. But I'm pretty proud that we got it done. We pushed through, and you know, we did what we did. So I guess I'll start at the beginning of the year. We got a chance to go out. Now I'm not good at remembering dates, but we got a chance to go out early. I believe it was late April, early May. And anyways, we got a chance to go out early and put some anhydrous on. Now, normally we prefer to side dress all our anhydrous, but we had a little bit of a window. We went out and did some point rows. We did some whole fields that we just usually have trouble side dressing on, some of the heavier ground. But we did some fields pre-plant, and I would put that in the good category. I'm glad we got that done because of the way the spring played out. It stayed wet for a while, and it was nice to just have that done to where we didn't have to worry about those fields. And that's one of those things where, you know, you might have a certain practice that you really like to do or prefer to do, but it comes down to me, you know, they always say don't put all your eggs in one basket. If we can put some of our nitrogen out ahead of time, that's kind of lightening the load for later on when it's time to side dress, where if you get a wet spell or whatever and you can't get it done. So this year, and I think years to come, I would like to do some pre-plant anhydrous just to spread out the risk a little bit, and that's one thing I think we did right. Now, as long as we're on the topic of stuff we did right, one thing that we did that was a little unconventional was I had an 80-acre field and a 40-acre field that was bean stubble from the year before, and I wanted to no-till in it. I did not want to go in there with the field cultivator. I just had it in my head that I was going to no-till this farm because that's what I'm wanting to do. Well, it was a little too wet, and it was time to go. We didn't want to wait around for it to dry out. So what I did is I hooked up our rotary hoe, and I should have got this on video after the fact. I wish I would have, but I went out there with our rotary hoe, and I rotary hoed the whole thing. And I think that broke the crust just enough and got a little bit of air to it, and by the next day we were able to plant it. Now that farm did pretty well. I think it averaged pretty close to 170, and that the 40 that I did was maybe 165, but that is right in there with everything else that we had conventional tillage. So that to me proves that, you know, even on a tough year, you can go in and plant in standing bean stubble, just no-till right through it, and you're going to do just as good as pulling something like this that I'm doing right now, and we're hitting it with a field cultivator and planting it that way. You save a lot of fuel, you save a lot of time, save wear and tear on equipment, and that was one thing that I really thought we did well this year. You know, you don't normally see a rotary hoe out before the crop's out of the ground or even planted at that point, but this year, it was worth a try. You know, we got a 40-foot wide rotary hoe. It didn't take me very long to do it. So it was just trial and error thing, and it worked. Now, one issue we had this spring was this thing right here, this disc ripper. It caused a lot of problems for us this spring. We worked the ground deep, and our ground is kind of sandy, so it's coarser soils. It's not as tightly held together. And when you work it deep with something like this, it leaves the ground soft. And if you have a wet spring, like we had this year, it's really hard to get across it with a field cultivator or a sprayer. It just, you sink down as deep as you rip. Now, I've got this thing raised up right now. I don't want to pull it that deep. I'm only going, I don't even really know exactly, like 8 inches deep. But we ripped it maybe 10 or 12 inches deep last year. Thought we were doing some good with compaction, but I think we learned some lessons on that with our type of soil. Compaction isn't as big of an issue. I'm not saying it's not an issue, but it's not as big of an issue for us. So if we go in and work it deep, we pay for it the next year. So that was one problem. I noticed that when we were pulling a field cultivator on our standing bean stubble from the year before, we didn't sink at all, and it would seem like the ground was wetter there, but we could get across it just because the ground was firm. Now, that's one of the reasons, I've stated this many times, that's one of the reasons why I want to go to no-till. I think it's a better system. I'm not knocking the conventional guys. I realize different parts of the world, you have to farm different ways, and I've heard tillage described as a necessary evil. You know, I think that if you're more responsible with your nutrients your NP, your K. I think that's more important than your tillage practices. Yeah, if you go no-till, you can sequester more carbon in that and hold on to your nitrogen and your phosphorus and potassium better. But I don't think that conventional tillage is a bad thing. It can be portrayed as a bad thing to a lot of people, but anyways, I'm getting off on a rant. So tillage was kind of a thing we fought this year, and we're wanting to get away from that. Another thing that we did a little different this year is, since we planted the crops so late, specifically the corn, we only did one pass with our herbicide. Right after Dad would get done planting the field, I would come in with the sprayer and spray Acuron and Roundup, and we just did I don't know if it was a full rate or not, but we did a one pass application, and our chemical guy at the co-op, he was a little bit worried that if we sprayed a post pass, that the atrazine and the Acuron would maybe affect our beans the following year. So we decided to go one pass, and I gotta be honest, I was pretty nervous about that because I know how much weeds can take off and just kind of ruin a really good corn crop. We have a lot of ragweed in our area, giant ragweed, and I've seen it like completely choke out the corn before if you don't stay on top of it. So I was a little worried about that, but it actually worked very well. The only issue we had is in places where it was a little sandier, we had some grass come through, but that was pretty manageable. We did spray a couple fields post just because we knew they had a little bit more weed pressure and they already had some grass coming back. So we hit that with some Roundup to take care of the grass, but overall, very happy with our chemical program in corn. Soybeans, we switched to Zidua. I really like the chemical. We had problems with mare's tail, which mare's tail is like trying to kill a fence post with a sprayer. It's just not possible. If you don't get it early or don't do it in the fall, you're not going to get it. So overall, very happy with our chemical program, and it also saved us a lot of money only doing one pass on corn. So we'll chalk that up for things we did right. Now we'll fast forward a little bit to harvest. This is our first year ever growing seed beans, and it was pretty successful. We had 135 acres of seed beans, and if you don't know what that means, it just means the seed company signed a contract with us, or we signed a contract with them to grow seed for them to use. They'll clean it, bag it, sell it to retail customers for next year or whatever. But this is our first year ever doing that. We were a little nervous about it because you have to have your combine clean because you want genetic purity, and you don't want to split the soybeans. So a lot of times, once soybeans hit 14%, which is where you want to start taking them out, it doesn't take them long to get down to 9%. Now, by that I mean if it's sunny, breezy, whatever, you can go from 14% in the morning down to 12% in the afternoon, and then the next day, by the end of the day, you'll be down to 9 and 8%. Now, the drier they get, the easier they are to crack. And you can't plant half a soybean seed and get a soybean plant. You got to have the whole thing. So with seed beans, you got to be really gentle with them. One thing we did to try and help with that is we didn't use our auger cart on the seed beans. So we handled them with the combine, the truck, and the auger going into the bin. Then we unloaded them with a belt conveyor that they provided for us. But I think not using the auger cart, we handled them one less time, and that prevented some splits. We actually hauled some of them out, they graded them, and we scored in the top tier of their clean out, so we got the max premium, which I was pretty proud of that. First year ever doing it, we didn't really know what we were doing, and we did a pretty good job. So now we'll kind of switch gears a little bit here and start talking about some of the things I wasn't real crazy about how we did this year. The one thing that sticks out to me is with harvest. Now, some guys had a problem with this a little more than we did, but I think we waited a little bit long to pick our corn. When we first started, we got into that first planted corn and it was still like 24 to 26%. And that field wasn't as bad because it was planted in May, so it had time to dry down. But we ended up waiting a little bit too long, I think, on some of our other corn. It had already froze. It wasn't going to dry down anymore. So we were, normal mindset is when corn's too wet, you just wait for it to dry down around here. We're in a climate where we're not pushed up against winter most of the time like they are in Minnesota or Dakotas or whatever. but we're not usually pressed up against winter that much, so we normally just let it field dry. And this year that just didn't work for us because it wasn't warm enough. We didn't get enough length of growing season, so a lot of that corn, once it got down to, I'm gonna say a range between 23 and 27% across the board, that's just the best that it was gonna do. You weren't gonna get any more field drying out of it, so I think we should have jumped on our corn a little bit earlier. We would have got it out a little more timely, which in the end, it didn't really affect us that much. We didn't have a whole lot go down, but I think we could have been a little bit more timely if we would have been a little bit more aggressive with taking our corn out. It just really stinks to have to pay the drying bill, and you hate to take it out when it's that wet. So if we have a year like this in the future, I think we're gonna jump on top of the corn a little bit quicker and try and get it out as fast as we can, knowing that it's probably not gonna dry down that much. Well, I was working ground yesterday, which is the beginning part of this video, and I got sidetracked. Dad needed some help at the township, so I had to park the tractor and go help him with that. Then we had to go load our trucks for beans to haul today. It's a long story, so if you can follow along, right now is the following day from about 2 minutes ago on the clip. But anyways, I'm back at the tractor working ground again. I'm just gonna pick up where I left off, if I can remember what I said. We're just going to continue this video. So anyways, this whole video is about things we did right this year and areas where we could improve a little bit. So one thing that I definitely want to work on in 2020 is our chemical program for our soybeans. We like to go out and put 2,4-D down with our burn down. That way it'll knock out any emerging mare's tail, ragweeds, water hemp. It does really good on those. The problem is you're supposed to wait 7 to 10 days after you spray 2,4-D before you plant your beans, because 2,4-D will kill beans. We are also planning on planting enlist beans next year, which are tolerant to 2,4-D, but that's another story. I'll save you the details. Anyways, I would like to try and go out as early as we can and get some 2,4-D on for our burn down with our Zidua and Roundup if there's any grass and whatnot. I think that'll be an area where we can improve. That mare's tail that we had in a few fields, it really took a toll on the bean yields. I think we lost 5 to 10 bushel just because of it. So, like I said, this year was so messed up, it just didn't work out. We couldn't do what we really wanted to do. We did the best we could with the weather we were given, but I want to try a little bit harder next year to get out there early. One thing that has always driven me nuts is when somebody says, oh, if I'd have known this, or if I'd have known what I know now, I would have done things way different. And it really bugs me because I feel, in my opinion, that I always do the best I can do with the information that I have provided at the time. For example, when we decided to plant all of our crops, instead of taking prevent plant, we were looking at our insurance guarantees. We thought the price of corn and beans were going up. It kind of didn't work out that way, but all the information we had at the time said plant the crop, get it in the ground, try and do the best you can, get in the ground. Looking back, maybe it would have been better off if a few farms would have been prevent plant, but I'm not one to say, well, man, I really wish I would have done this instead, because there's nothing you can do about it. But what I do think is important out of that is if you can look back and say, oh, there's a few things I would have done differently, just keep that in mind if you have a similar year in the future. The good thing about farming is at the end of the year, you reset the clock, you try it again next year, and you always try and do better. There's always things you can change, room for improvement, and that's what I like about farming. We did the best we could this year. There's things that we probably should have done different looking back, but I feel like we did a pretty good job for the hand that we were dealt. I'm gonna hop out here and see what kind of job I'm doing. So this cross dominator that we got, it does a really nice job. It leaves everything nice and level. You can bury as much or as little trash as you want. Almost everything is adjustable on that thing, and that's what I like about that tool. What I don't like about the tool is it's a disc ripper. So this machine is actually for sale. So if anybody's interested in this disc ripper, let me know. If conventional tillage is your thing, this is the tool for you. It's got straight blades in the front that chop up the residue. It's got 5 ripper shanks that go really deep, and then it's got 4 ripper shanks that don't go quite as deep to cover more trash. Then you've got 2 rows of concave discs that bury your trash, and then last you got a rolling basket that levels everything off. I really like this tool. I hate to get rid of it, but we just want to move towards more no-till, and we think this is a little bit too much tillage for our type of ground. So like I said, this disc ripper is for sale. If anyone's interested, I'll drop my email down in the description, and shoot me an email. We're also in the market for some sort of vertical tillage tool. We're kind of looking at the Salfords and the Landall, whatever model number they are, the Landalls. So if anyone's got any experiences with either of those, or any other brand for that matter, we're kind of open to anything. But leave that in the comments, your experiences with VT tools, and I really appreciate it. So these are the kinds of things that I like to reflect on towards the end of the year. With farming, there's a million different ways that you can do the same task. There's no-till, conventional till, strip till. You know, you can plant your corn in 30-inch rows, 20-inch rows, 36-inch rows, 22-inch rows. You can cultivate your corn, you can side dress, you can do pre-plant anhydrous, you can use urea. You get my drift. There's a million different ways to skin a cat, like they say. So I like to sit down, and I really like to try new things. So we'll usually try something new, whether it's just a different hybrid or try a different population on a farm. We go through and we try those every year, and I just like to try things, evaluate them, see if we can better our operation because of it. But anyways, I hope you took a little bit away from this. If you are a farmer, I think it's really important that you sit down, evaluate your operation, be thorough, be honest about everything that's going right, everything that's going wrong, and there's always room for improvement. So that being said, I think I'm just going to wrap up this video. It's about to get dark, and this camera sucks in the dark. I also have some different style content planned for over the winter. If you have any ideas on certain types of videos that you'd like to see, drop that down in the comments. Since harvest is over, obviously my videos will kind of slow down a little bit. They'll pick back up in the spring once we get busy in the field. But if you have any ideas on videos or something you'd like to see, something you want to know about, drop that down in the comments. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for following along with us through the year. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Share this, tell your friends. Really appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you next time, and have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.